The findings of the report may vindicate the bereaved families and survivors who have fought for decades to expose the truth, but it delivers no justice. Instead, it exposes a system that has allowed officers to simply walk away, retiring without scrutiny, sanction or consequence for failing to meet the standards the public has every right to expect. Yes, the law has now changed so that this loophole cannot be used in future, but for those affected by this case, that is no consolation. They are left with yet another bitter injustice. The truth finally acknowledged, but accountability denied. The report today comes 36 years after the disaster. 36 years since the Taylor inquiry correctly concluded that the cause of the disaster was the failure of police control. 13 years since the Hillsborough Independent Panel exposed the police cover-up by altering statements. 13 years since the IOPC started its work. 9 years since the fresh inquests concluded the victims had been unlawfully killed and the fans were exonerated. The evidence that has allowed the IOPC to draw its conclusions has been there all that time. No doubt the IOPC will point to the amount of material it has had to consider, but during this delay in finally reaching these conclusions, 2 of our clients died while waiting for the fresh inquests. They never got to see the unlawful killing verdict. Since that verdict, we have lost more clients. Dave Church, whose son Gary was unlawfully killed. Joan Tootle, whose son Peter was unlawfully killed. Teresa Glover, whose son Ian was unlawfully killed. Ed Rimmer, whose son Carl was unlawfully killed. And just a few months ago, Barry Devonside, whose son Christopher was unlawfully killed. There are sadly many others. They have all been denied the opportunity to hear these findings. They deserved better. We are pleased to see that the IOPC has endorsed our call for Hillsborough law, a law which, if it had been in place, would have saved all the Hillsborough families and survivors years of anguish, not to mention taxpayer money. We now call on the government to fully uphold its promise that Hillsborough law will extend to IOPC investigations without any caveats. Thank you. I will now pass over to Charlotte. After Charlotte, we will open up for questions. If you could please state the name of the person who your question is directed to, that would assist us. Thank you.
We would like to start by acknowledging the innocent victims, our loved ones, who were unlawfully killed at Hillsborough in 1989 due to the gross negligence manslaughter of multiple senior South Yorkshire Police officers, and acknowledge the bravery of Liverpool supporters who, despite their own injury and trauma, assisted to save lives, have stood on their truth, have assisted families and all investigations, inquiries, inquests and reports at every opportunity. They were wrongfully blamed by the people who should have protected them, who should have kept them safe and assisted them in their time of need. We commend your bravery and we will never be able to thank you enough. We would like to thank the IOPC for their detailed and comprehensive support. As predicted, it confirms what families and survivors knew all along. David Duckenfield is a liar. His first thought, whilst he stood over Liverpool fans, watching them fight for their lives, was to blame them and protect himself. Despite multiple opportunities over the course of 25 years, up until he gave evidence at the fresh inquests, he chose to remain silent and watch as we fought for justice, truth and accountability. We made it clear following the inquest, and we reiterate again today, that we do not accept his apology. We welcome the conclusion in relation to the 12 senior officers and 1 police constable that their actions or lack of them amounts to a case to answer for gross misconduct. While some conclusions are disappointing, we respect the process was investigated and accept the element of closure. Many remind us that Hillsborough was 36 years ago, but nobody is more acutely aware of that than those who lost loved ones and those who survived. For all these years, we have longed for full disclosure, and we thought that we'd got that when the Hillsborough Independent Panel released their report. So I'm sure you can imagine the utter disgust that despite fresh inquests and appeals by Operation Resolve, Assistant Chief Constable Jones did not hand over all of his personal policing documents, and only did so when he learnt of this investigation. We were also shocked to learn that the IOPC discovered over 130 more South Yorkshire statements that in fact had been amended, bringing that total to over 300. From missing documents and videotapes to highly respected, high-ranking, experienced officers who could not recall, we will never truly know the full extent of South Yorkshire Police Force's deception, but there is no hiding, there is no destroying, and there is no way to cover up that they failed their duties and then they sought to blame the victims. We also want to acknowledge that the statement was made by South Yorkshire Police Federation this morning, who, rather than acknowledge their failings that were exposed right from the Taylor report, they have chosen to double down and highlight that some of their officers are now very elderly, while our loved ones didn't get to live to have that privilege. We refute their contention that they have not had the right to reply. Our understanding is that anyone named in the report would have either been interviewed or had the opportunity to respond to any criticisms levelled. Shame on every single one of you. We welcome the conclusion that Norman Betterson played a direct role in seeking to brief others that South Yorkshire police officers were not to blame. He has stated on many occasions over the years that his role was peripheral, but this report has concluded that he was in the thick of it. Families knew this from the moment he was appointed as Chief Constable of Merseyside, and despite protests and complaints, they were ignored. The IOPC has concluded that Norman Betterson would be liable for charges of gross misconduct had he have still been a serving officer today. And on that basis, we have emailed the Forfeiture Committee and asked them to remove Norman Betterson's knighthood and his Queen's Policing Medal. We believe that his alleged dishonesty brings both of these honours into disrepute. We cannot regain the time that we have spent trying to prove the failings of those in power, but we did so for the love of our brothers, my father and Margaret's son. We would like to finish by welcoming the IOPC's acknowledgement that a public accountability bill is of huge importance. The IOPC has unequivocally endorsed the public accountability bill, which is going through Parliament as we speak. That is the law that we, the families, have called for, and it would prevent public servants undertaking the sort of cover-up exposed in this report and bring them to justice if they try. We also argue that this report gives further justification for the importance of the independent public advocate Cindy Butts and call for her resources to be expanded and strengthened to ensure that should members of the public ever find themselves in the position that we were, where an organisation seeks to protect itself, she can protect them effectively and thoroughly. God bless the 97. May they rest in peace.
Thank you, Charlotte. We'll now open up for questions. If you could just state the name of the person you would like that question to go to. Yes, Liam.
Charlotte, thank you for your incredibly powerful statement. It's the input from the Liverpool Echo. I was fortunate enough to travel with you guys to London to see that historic moment when Hillsborough Law was first laid. How confident are you now that when that bill makes its way through Parliament, the bill that you guys have all worked so hard to get through, that this kind of cover-up, this kind of injustice never happens to anyone else again?
Very confident, providing that the amendments that we've put forward to the Bill Committee are included, we are very confident. We have spent, nearly 10 years campaigning for the Public Accountability Bill, and, we know that this will make a change, and that is something that's very important. We can't allow these things to keep on happening, and they are.
Hi there, I'm Steph Oliver from Sky News. I suppose a question to all of you really, Charlotte, Margaret, Stephen, Sue, if I may. Just how upsetting, how frustrating is it to learn that 12 officers would have a case to answer for gross misconduct, and yet no action will be taken against any of them?
Do you want to answer that?
Go on, Mark.
Well, it is frustrating. It really makes you very, very angry when you think of all of those 97 who died unlawfully killed, and yet not one person's being held to account. To me, that's a disgrace. And I think also what I must add as well, I think this is why it's so important to have the Public Advocate Bill, a Hillsborough law, because of them reasons, what you've just said. We're not here on behalf of Hillsborough. We're all sitting here to change things for the good of the country, for the good of the nation. And I think the the report that's come out today, to me, it might be a waste of, if I may say so, people might be saying they have their own opinions and they're entitled to it, absolutely. But I disagree with it. I don't think in many ways it's a waste of money. It's not our fault it's took this long. If they told the truth in the very first place, none of us would be sitting here now. But where I find it's not a waste of money at this moment in time is it's going to change things for other people. It's not going to do nothing for the Hillsborough families. We know that and we accept that and we understand that. But what we've been campaigning for, the four of us especially, is to change things, for the good of the nation. And to me, that's what this is all about. And if that report does anything today, hopefully for the future generations of our children, our children's children, that will always be there and nothing can ever alter it.
And Stephen, Sue, if I can ask you the same question, how do you feel about the fact that there's going to be no action against any of these police officers?
Well, I think Hillsborough, or the Hillsborough campaign story, is been beaten, if you like, by the passage of time. We had nearly no laws to help us at the time of the disaster and beyond. And what we've been campaigning for this Hillsborough law, or Public Accountability Bill as it is now, it surely will help in the future, as Mark quite rightly stated. And I think today's findings from the IOPC report must surely, when people from the House of Lords, the House of Commons, look at this, ram that home. We've got to change. And as I say, I think today's report, nails that. No one should be beaten by the passage of time. We should have truth, justice and accountability at least within a person's lifetime, because we've spoke about people we've lost here. Can't happen again.
Yes, it's very frustrating, but at least they've been named now, so their families can feel the shame of what went on. Sadly, for far too many families, we've lost parents and they died tormented because they knew the extent of the cover-up. So now let's hope some of these families feel the shame that they should.
From ITN again to the four of you, if I may. You talk about the system allowing officers to walk away. Over the last 36 years, you've had to fight the establishment. What toll has that taken?
Well, it's took a great toll, because as was mentioned earlier on, how many families have died since Hillsborough. I mean, I can speak personally about my own. I lost my parents right after James died. And my mother did say to me at the time, the death of my grandson's going to kill me, and it did. I think the knock-on effect has affected so many people. And what we've all got to remember here as well, some of our survivors who were accused so wrongly committed suicide. They've got to be remembered as well. And that's what angers me. The knock-on effect of Hillsborough has been tremendous. I've met people even today, you know, to this day, who are still suffering so badly because they were accused. And part and parcel, and don't mind me saying this, but the media played a great role in that as well. You know, and that's what you've got to remember as well. The things that's got to be changed, not just within the system of the law, of the police and everybody, but the media have to be very careful as well when they're handling people who are going through such a traumatic time in their lives, how they handle it, and they should listen to the people who were there, not the people who weren't there.
I think the answer to that question is the toll it takes on you comes in waves, you know, because Hillsborough it's in the news 1 minute and it's not, it's good and it's not, and you're constantly going through that. And to go through that for 36 years, and we're still going through it, and we will go through for a while yet, it just leaves you empty at times, and you've got to get that feeling where you, like today, coming in front of all the press here, it's stressful, it's worrying, but you've got to drag it up from your boots, and we do, and we will. And again, it's that message we keep trying to send out. This cannot happen again, and we need sanctions in place to ensure that happens. But it's been a long, difficult road. We were all quite young at the time of Hillsborough. We're all quite old now. Well, not all of us, Charlotte, I'm sorry. But you know, we can't have it all this time again. It's got to stop. Keep pressing that message, but it's true.
Yeah, it's stressful, it's emotional. Receiving reports like that takes you back to day one. That's not easy. So.
How difficult is it to accept that you will never get accountability?
I think we've accepted that. We've had no choice. You can't let it eat you up, so you have to accept it. What we want to make sure is no one else goes through something similar in the future.
It would have been nice to have seen somebody be held to account, and I'm not talking about maybe somebody going into prison, but I am talking about a guy who walks away, who's told so many lies, and can walk away and was found guilty to the criminal standard, if you like, at the second inquest, and can walk away scot-free with a full pension. To me, that is a disgrace on a system. It's a disgrace on this nation as well. At least he should have lost his pension and put back into a system to help other people. Who will fight against any injustice. Like it was not so long ago that Charlotte and I think Sue, I'm not sure whether Steve was there or not, I can't quite remember because I'm getting old now. But we went to a thing in London for people who were fighting an injustice, and there were so many of them, you know, so many of them, and I thought to listen to their stories was heart-wrenching, and I thought they are going through exactly more or less what we've gone through. You never want to see people ever that happen to again. I mean, I don't enjoy now, I'm getting too old to be running round and going to different places and doing talks to different people to try and educate them of why we are still here. We shouldn't have to do this. If somebody years ago or centuries, generations ago had have fought like we've all fought, we wouldn't be sitting here now and our loved ones would still be alive. So what people who are chanting at games and derogatory things, it's got to stop, because one day they'll never know what might happen and they might need what we have fought for. who knows?
Can I just ask, sorry, Bill McCann from BBC Northwest, you talked about your hope about victims of future disasters because of Hillsborough law and police not being able to retire to avoid misconduct issues. But I just wonder, for you, was this your last chance at getting justice for the 97?
We'll never get justice. No. Nobody's ever going to go to prison for killing them, so we'll never get justice, and we knew that. We knew that this report would, it had to follow the Hillsborough Independent Panel's findings and then the fresh inquests. But this just, it confirms everything that survivors and family members have always said. And it validates, doesn't it, that they knew all along what the actions of South Yorkshire police officers were. Whether they like to accept it or not, this isn't old. It's not new news. This is just it's sort of giving strength to what the Taylor report said way back. When Hillsborough had just happened. There's always going to be this battle where South Yorkshire Police say, no, we didn't. Well, we know that they did, and there's no moving away from that now.
I'd like to say also, the help seems to be given to the perpetrators and never the victims. And I think important, what's not been mentioned here, and none of us have said, is that it's got to be a level playing field. It's got to be. Every court case that we went for, we had to pay for ourselves. We had to go cap in hand. People should never have to do that. Legal aid should be for the victims. And unfortunately, the victims weren't getting any help whatsoever. But the perpetrators were getting all the funding. So when people say, well, the money it's Hillsborough, the money it's cost, that's not our fault. That's the system's fault. And that's where it needs to be changed. And it's got to be a level playing field and a fair and just and proper.
Yeah.
So, one more about Norman Bettis that you mentioned. The Dean just down the MP's put an early day motion down on the House today, backing your call for him to be stripped of his knighthood and his police medal. Is that something that you're hoping will get real momentum now following this report? Yeah.
It's there in black and white. The allegations against him is that he was dishonest and he played down his role. And he's always maintained that. He's given very confident interviews in the past, and we've had to sit there and listen to it. I think that he should lose his knighthood and his Queen's Policing Medal. He brings them both into disrepute, and it taints it for every single person that is deserving of it. Don't you need integrity to be knighted? Doesn't look like Norman Bettison's got any anymore.
Yeah, just liars should not receive knighthoods. It's as simple as that. We look at it, there's something going on as we speak here. The likes of Kev Sinfield running for the Bob Burrows campaign. And people like that, yeah, you respect that. But now that we realise, and it's been mentioned in the report today, Bettison is a liar, and he should have his knighthood taken away. As Charlotte said, it brings it into allegedly, it brings it into disrepute. So yeah, let's take it away.
I am Claire from Channel News. The report published today is really, really clear on the blame shift and on the protection of reputation and how wrong that was. They use very careful language, though, when talking about that. Would you have wished that they'd have gone further, that they'd have been firmer, instead of saying that there's no evidence of an orchestrated cover-up?
They can't though, can they? They've got their own professional standards that they need to be within, so we've got to be realistic to that as well. But ultimately, there's no denying it's there black and white what South Yorkshire Police Force did, what West Midlands Police Force did, what individual officers did. It doesn't matter what wording is used, their actions are there for everybody to see. They unlawfully killed 97 people and then blamed their mates for killing them. Doesn't get any worse than that. No amount of words is going to make that better, or make that more, or make us feel better.
I don't believe we'll ever get to the full truth of Hillsborough, but what we know now is bad enough, it's damning enough, and people have been named and shamed now, at last.
Over here, thank you.
Hi, Tom Dunn from BBC Radio Merseyside. 36 years of anger, frustration, anguish for you four and many others. And now that this, they say, final report has come out and it almost sort of draws a line under the sand, are you able to transfer that energy that you've had now fully into the Hillsborough Law campaign and that fight?
Yeah, I think so.
We've got to. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We've got to make a positive out of the negative.
I think, Tom, as for the Hillsborough Law, this has been 9 years for us, and just on its own. And if it takes another 9 years, we will carry on. We can't just leave this here now. We've come too far to make in this fight. We've got to make things better, and we believe, as us four, and I'm sure a lot of other families do, it will be better. And
yeah, but it's no use starting a job, is it, and then not finishing it properly, is the way I look at it. We've started something, not just us, but obviously with the good help of other people and good people behind us. So, and I always say, you've got to see a good job through, and we won't be happy until this is, all through. And obviously then we know our 97 never died in vain. They've changed an awful lot at the moment anyway. If you look at supporters, the way they're treated now, they're treated a lot better, and that's because of the 97 who died. Fans have a choice now of either sitting or standing. Didn't have that choice years ago because they couldn't afford to be able to pay for seats. But now they have that choice because of them 97. So much good has been done out the 97, and this will hopefully be the final hurdle. And then maybe we, as families, especially me at my age, will have some peace and be able to enjoy the rest of my days knowing them 97. But don't forget, this is not about us. We're doing this for the 97. We're going to, I always say now, I feel as if we and other people, not just us, behind us, we're like their disciples. We're doing this on behalf of them, for other people, because I know that's what them 97 would want. It's simple as that.
Hi, Rowan Bridge from BBC News. It's about a third of the complaints were upheld. I just wondered about your thoughts about the ones that weren't, and the reasons that were given for that, and how you feel about that.
Well, I'm glad that you've asked that question actually, because I would quite like to just answer that. So I made 2 complaints myself about the conduct of 2 police officers who tended to my dad in the gym. They weren't honest about his condition, and they weren't honest about their actions thereafter, and they kept it to themselves until the inquests, when statements and things were being collected for the inquests. And they refused to engage. They refused to give any further information, and even when I quite literally begged and said, for my own mental health, for my own mental well-being, I just need, even if you don't put it on record, I just need them to answer some questions so that I can understand what happened to my dad. And I was told no, because their mental health was too poor and they weren't stable enough. But nobody throughout this process has ever given a damn about my mental health and the impact that has had on me. And even the complaints that I made to the IOPC for this report, those 2 police officers were never told that I made those complaints to preserve their mental well-being.
Hopefully they know now.
Could you just say on that point, one of the ones that jumped out to me was, where was David Duckenfield? I think it was the Robinson families asked the question, and that was upheld. But how, in all this Hillsborough disaster, do we not know where David Ducklefield was? I mean, he was the match commander, he was a new match commander. I'm sure all the lads under his watch were careful when he walked down the corner and, you know, where's the new boss, you've got to impress him, etc, etc. But still to this day, we don't know where was David Ducklefield.
He knows where he was.
So,
I think...
Well, he was the invisible man, wasn't he?
Yeah. I think there may be a few police officers who are around retirement age now, who were on duty that day, who may like to get it off their chest before they pass away, and they may tell their truth about their experience of Hillsborough, of how many of them were told to go out and take photographs of beer cans that they could find, that sort of thing. We may get a little bit more towards the truth of Hillsborough, but some of those will probably believe their lies by now. And so some will happily go to their death without ever wanting peace. But hopefully some do want a bit of peace, and they'll turn whistleblowers, and Hillsborough law will protect whistleblowers.
And I think that also sort of jumps at you for the culture that was in the South Yorkshire Police at the time. And sadly, you know, it is still in the police force. We've seen a documentary not so long ago about the Met, you know, the culture there. So there's still these things going on in the police force, and the whistleblowing policy, if it's tightened up, hopefully will help to that. But the culture in the police has got to change as well. They haven't, in my opinion, but they need to take some sort of better responsibility for what's been going on.
Well, also, Steve, also as well, you should not have police investigating the police like, you know, that was absolutely wrong as well. That wasn't completely independent, was it?
No.
You know, the West Midlands investigating the South Yorkshire Police, to me, that's another thing that needs to be looked into. That should never happen, ever.
No. Well, that's it, you know, the West Midlands Police have been mentioned anyway, so...
Yeah.
Sue, just following on from what you said about the officers, if any of them were to come forward, would you accept a sit-down with them, theoretically, if they were to come and admit the wrong that they had?
Yes, yeah. And we'd be open-minded too. Yes, of course we would. Yeah, we just want to right the wrongs of the past. Yeah.
Well, Tom, I remember during the Hillsborough inquests, a police officer made a complaint about myself, saying he'd see me on the telly and I was giving the police down the banks, you know. So he asked for a meeting with me, with his solicitors, with his, I think his Fed rep and his wife. And when I agreed, he wouldn't see me with my legal representative. But I said to him, no, I'll go and meet him, I've got nothing to be scared of. So we went and met the man, and we had a good discussion. And he said I was constantly, you know, harassing the police on the TV and in the papers. And I said, well, that's what I'm doing, because we're trying to find the truth, etc, etc. And we had a good conversation, and he accepted, you know, my point, because I wasn't aiming at younger policemen on the day. We've always sort of started at the top and worked our way down and see where it's landed. And the meet went on quite a bit longer than that. But I think he and I found it quite cathartic that we'd had that conversation. And I'll keep that privately, but it was a good thing to do. And we're always open to that. I'd meet anyone. You know, I'd love to meet David Ducklefield, for example. Because we had prepared statements for if he was found guilty, he wasn't, and I never got to read that statement to him. And I'd love to have done, but I'm still willing to do it, as I'm sure.
So there was a police officer that found my dad on the pitch and tried to resuscitate him, got him help. I'm still in contact with him now. I've been in contact with him since the inquests. I'm very grateful to him, very grateful for the help that he gave my dad. And he's a good man. You know, he didn't do anything wrong on the day, and he was always honest about his actions. You know, following the disaster. So I think we're all, you know, I don't think it's that, you know, we don't hate anybody. I just think it's that, you know, it's the lies, it's the, you know, no, we didn't do that. You did. We can see that you did. The CCTV footage that you did, and you know, it's just, it's that, it's the disrespect and the lack of honesty. When, you know, you're talking about 97 people that died, it's that burns really deep.
I know you mentioned it before, I know. But I just wondered when earlier on you saw that statement put out by South Yorkshire Police head, what your gut reaction was.
That's why I was so anxious when I came in, because I was furious. The disrespect that they have for us, that the South Yorkshire Police Federation have for us, is deplorable, and it's uncalled for and unwarranted.
I worry for the young police officers there. Yeah. It does nothing for their morale to hear that attitude still going on today.
It goes back to the day, doesn't it, though, for when all the lies started, when they all started backing each other up. Who'll ever forget Paul Middup being interviewed outside Hillsborough? You know, it was, again, the judgmental attitude of him. He was the same when he gave evidence at the Warrington inquests. His attitude hadn't changed. Excuse me. And I
think it's very nice when they turn around and say, you know, some of them now, the officers are old, and some have died. I was so angry, and I thought, my son only got to 18. A lot of the families have died. How lucky are they to die in their own home, not traumatised like we all were? How lucky were they to reach the age? I'd say that we had children who died at Hillsborough, 10 years of age, the youngest. How lucky are they to have got past that age, to past 18, to past 19? I'm so angry with their response, absolute angry with it. It doesn't show any respect at all towards the families. And I want no apologies from any of them. We don't need it. And I won't say really what I think, because you wouldn't like it.
But this is National Grief Week, and you know, this man to say what he did in that statement this morning, you know, he wants to come to this side of the table and see what it's like. You know, when you lose somebody, and I've lost a few people since Hillsborough, and you deal with these things because they're an act of God. You know, they were ill, they were taken after an illness or whatever it be. But for us, after 36 years, still trying to come to terms with why our loved ones died, and that there's nobody that we can go up to and say, well, why? You know, whose fault was it? We can't say that. So our grief has been continuous, and will continue to be continuous for the rest of our lives. It'll never go away. But the other people we've lost at times, we've learned to cope with it, because that's what we do. We're human. And this guy today, you know, you want to take that back.
There needs to be a culture change throughout all these big organisations, but especially the police, and it needs to be led from the very top. And if the top aren't willing to change, like that person from the Fed, then they need to leave, because there's no room, and it will do nothing for morale lower down, and things will never change. It's got to be led from the very top.
Anyone else? Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone, for coming today. I think some of you want to do some one-to-one interviews, so we'll just we'll make some arrangements for that to happen now. But thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Done.
Okay. There we go.
Well, that there, a selection of some of the families of the bereaved from the Hillsborough disaster, families of the 97. We heard from Charlotte Hennessy, who lost her father in the disaster, and Margaret Aspinall, who lost her son, Steve Kelly, whose brother was killed, and Sue Roberts, whose brother was also killed in the disaster. Really powerful responses from them all, powerful and eloquent, really, about how they're feeling today, now that the misconduct inquiry by the IOPC has been published, and also how they feel reflecting back on the 36 years since that dreadful day. A lot of emotions today. Let's go live to Liverpool, and our Chief North of England correspondent Greg Milam, who's at the Hillsborough Memorial at Anfield Stadium for us this lunchtime. We heard from all of them. Margaret Aspinall, who, of course, has been such a vociferous campaigner for so many years, asked about any sympathy she might have for some of those officers who are now old, or some of them who might have passed away. And she talks about the luxury that these officers will have had of passing away at their own homes with their families around them, unlike the families of the 97.
Yeah, I think that anger is directed at a statement from the South Yorkshire Police Federation that represents officers that has said that those officers shouldn't be tried in the media, contending a lot of what's contained in that report today. And I think a lot of that anger you heard there is about that. And the fact there's no accountability. This report has named more than a dozen officers who would have, if they'd still been serving, had a case to answer for gross misconduct. But because of the law at the time, they couldn't face those proceedings, and they now never will. And I think for a lot of the families and the lawyers representing them, the fact this report gives a lot of information, maybe new information, but it doesn't come with that accountability of anyone facing any proceedings, I think is really difficult. The fact also that, as was pointed out, a lot of what is contained in this report was known 36 years ago in the report by Lord Justice Taylor. So why was it not possible then to carry out those proceedings or see that those officers who they knew had lost control didn't face some action as a result of what happened on that day? This report gives names to those officers. The then Chief Constable of South Yorkshire, Peter Wright, saying he would have had a case to answer for trying to deflect the blame, for providing a false narrative. Of course, the fact the fans were blamed by the police in those initial days, still a cause of such anger for those families. And Sir Norman Bettison, who went on to be the Chief Constable of Merseyside, who among those cases to answer elements would be the fact that he was dishonest about his role in Hillsborough in that application to be the Chief Constable of Merseyside. So there's a lot that still rankles those families. They feel this report has taken too long, it doesn't tell them enough, and it certainly doesn't bring that accountability that they've wanted to see for so long.
Greg, on the subject of Sir Norman Bettison, there is a campaign which is backed by the families for him to be removed of his knighthood and also his Police Bravery Medal.
Yeah, that's one of the elements that will continue, and there are certainly noises being made about someone who they see has brought his office into disgrace and therefore doesn't deserve that knighthood. But there are questions for so many of those who were there that day, who were on duty, many of them, of course, now retired, some have passed away, but questions those families still have on that road to what they see as justice.
Greg, thank you very much. Greg Milam for us in Liverpool, and we will be returning to Greg and also hopefully talking in the next hour to Margaret Aspinall, whose son James died in the disaster, as we get further reaction to this report, which has been published by the Independent Office for Police Conduct, which found that 12 police officers would have faced gross misconduct proceedings for fundamental failures on that day and their concerted efforts to blame fans in the aftermath.